everyone. This is another edition of our Escape from Data Darkness webcast series. Today we'll be talking to Brad Householder, and I'll do a little bit of an introduction to him in a minute. The subject of today, I have to mute one of my screens here, will be on better and faster decisions in supply chain management. I'm looking forward to a great discussion, and I hope you'll enjoy the comments that we'll get from Brad. A few words about eccenca. Eccenca is a data-centric company. We've talked about data centricity in previous webinars. I think the big thing for organizations is to manage data horizontally across the many silos. That's what we think digital transformation is all about. But Brad pointed out to me that really, why do we manage all of that data, even horizontally? Why do we talk about digital transformation if we don't have any outcomes from it? Rather, it's not about making data big or making it bigger or whatever. It's about making organizations better, and decision automation is really the big subject here. eccenca is helping organizations across Europe right now, and you can see that this help requires local support, so we also support in many of the European countries in the local language, because digital transformation is not only about hardware and software, it's also about people. And we like to have our people work hand in hand with our customers to achieve the transformational goals that they're setting for themselves. But I'll leave it at that, and obviously be happy to answer questions, in a one-on-one situation. Let's talk about Brad today. I'm really happy that Brad is committed to join us on this. Brad has an incredible track record, with starting with PRTM and Price Waterhouse, of course, and now being a leader at DBI Networks. Brad and I really met when I think I was invited to your digital task force, Brad, at the APIC Supply Chain Council, discuss about the digital future of supply chain management, and we had a lot of very interesting discussions about the future of this supply chain management and what that would mean in terms of digital maturity and evolving, the practice of supply chain management. And I think those discussions really led to a bit of a friendship, I would say. And so thank you very much for coming. Maybe you can say a few words about yourself or the background that we have.
Sure,
to get
thanks.
started.
And excited to be here. This is a favorite topic of mine, and hopefully we'll be able to squash it into an hour, because as you know, once I get rolling on this, I could go on. But I've always been very central to the notion that technology is fundamental to supply chains, and that's not only information technology but all forms of technology, and I think we've really seen that accelerate, and so that's been a passion of mine for years. And I was really happy to get connected, Chris, with you and eccenca in that digital task force that APICS and the Supply Chain Council put together, and now is very actively a major thread within the Association for Supply Chain Management, and in no small part, the broader mission of ASCM has been around really understanding and embracing digital, and really helping companies and supply chains across the world, even in public health and other things as we see today, be much more effective and efficient and faster and more agile. So one of my passions, and I fundamentally believe that some of the technologies that in particular you and eccenca are working on are going to be critical to the next wave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, supply chain has, and you mentioned the pandemic, and obviously supply chain has become such a common word over the past year, certainly, and really even before the pandemic, right? You literally can't go 15 minutes without hearing about it on TV. Why is that?
Well, unfortunately, the going 15 minutes on TV is mostly about the breakages of supply chain and not being able to do the things that we needed to do. And certainly the pandemic has brought that really to the forefront, but it really predated that. And I think changes in global trade and the political economic fabric and that ripple effect through the economies really was forcing a rebalancing of supply chains anyway. I mean, once upon a time, it was such if you built a manufacturing plant, it was good for 20 years. Now it's 20 months maybe before you want to change footprints and move demand and supply around the globe. And so if I look at it, the real premiums that these changes have put on supply chain are agility and flexibility. But those are outcomes, right? I become agile, I become flexible. What are the characteristics that I look at to become more agile and flexible, which are no longer nice to haves? They are absolutely business imperatives. And those underlying characteristics are speed and precision, right? I got to be fast. I got to be able to interpret changes, reconfigure, and execute with precision coming out of that. And what does that mean from a data and technology perspective? Well, it means that I need to have the ability to rapidly sense changes. I need to be able to absorb data and figure out when things are moving. I need to be able to very quickly decide what I do about those changes, and then I need to execute those with precision. And the other implication of that is it really requires collaboration. And collaboration is a really interesting topic. I wrote an article years ago on supply chain visibility. I said, again, visibility is an enabler. It's not an end goal. I want visibility so I can create seamless collaboration across the supply chain. And now 25 years of e-business and various things in supply chain, collaboration is still a very elusive goal. And I think one of the big lessons is oftentimes the bottleneck is internal. It's our own ability within our company or our entity to collaborate seamlessly within before we can even collaborate externally. And oftentimes that the hitches in that are the ability to get data, use data, and share data quickly and efficiently across the supply chain. So again, the changes over the last several years and really brought to bear in big part by the pandemic have really kicked collaboration and speed and precision into a must-have. And I think the real winners are the ones that are going to be masters of those three things coming out of it.
Okay, but you did mention data, but how do you turn data into knowledge? To actually drive decision making and drive agility. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because from what I'm seeing here with our customers, they've already established large data lakes. They've established large data warehouses, but effectively that hasn't given them any of the decision making capability that you were talking about. So maybe we need to talk about that a little bit. Where's the gap? What's the problem?
Well, I mean, it simply can't be done without data, but data is necessary and not sufficient. So Chris, if you want to jump to the next slide.
All right.
The problem is we know most companies are swimming in data. They've got all sorts of data in every way, shape, and form. But to me, the essential thing, if I put it in the language of supply chain, is that data is a raw material. It's nothing more, right? Data in and of itself is of little real business value. Years ago, I kind of was scribbling on a napkin and I put this data, information, knowledge, wisdom down. And I thought, it was relatively early in my consulting career. And I thought I had come up with just the most brilliant framework to how to think about data and transforming data into useful stuff. Only to find out that this pyramid was actually invented or formulated sometime probably in the 40s to 70s. And without going into a lot of the history, it's really quite fascinating if you want to look at it, the DIKW pyramid, or there are various names for it, and the origins are somewhere between some Chinese American geographer and T.S. Eliot, the poet. So I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Just like some really interesting history underlying it. But suffice it to say, Brad Householder did not invent this framework, but I found it incredibly useful. And data is clearly at the bottom. You can't do anything above that without the data, but it's not enough. It's necessary but not sufficient. So to me, the key is, again, thinking about data as a raw material. But to turn it into information, it really needs to be cleaned and organized and validated and all those things where people struggle immensely. But even having done that, I have it cleaned and organized and validated, and I know what I have. It's still of little real value at that point. It's not until we turn it into knowledge that it is that it begins to have business value. And I use the term um, do the right analytics right. The first thing is I have to know what problem I'm trying to solve, what decision I'm trying to make, and I have to do the right analytics around that, and then I have to do them properly. But the key thing here really is this knowledge layer, and I'll drill into that a little bit. Wisdom certainly is important. It's the accumulated knowledge over time. It's kind of hard to characterize. The way I look at it is, you know, gee, every time I change prices, this funny thing happens. It would have been hard to figure out the analytics to determine that, but I've observed it over dozens of particular events over time that just begins to create a hypothesis. But we'll leave wisdom at that point, and we'll kind of
Well,
move
yeah,
forward.
I like the framework. Obviously, this is something that we've been struggling with a little bit, in communicating, what's the importance of knowledge in the context of running an enterprise. Because obviously knowledge used to be something, that's part of the HR department, developing the skill of employees, and developing some knowledge there, and that knowledge used to end up in PDF documents,
Yeah.
or maybe in training folders or something, maybe in Confluence or something, but it never really added so much to the agility of the organization at the end of the day. We've seen, I hate to put it on the spot, but see some large organizations employees talk about strategies that were put in place 10 years ago by a previous CEO, basically still working on the old paradigms. So the question is, how do you, actually, turn data into information and into knowledge in a digital way to actually convert that into something that is actionable and agile, and that makes your organization move faster.
If data is the raw material, think of data as crude oil in an energy value chain, or wind for that matter, right? And knowledge is the turbine and how it's designed to use the wind, but it's still not the end game, right? The end game is I have to turn that into something of value. And to me, the essential pivot is decisions, right? Why do we look at data? Why do we analyze data? Why do we make plans in supply chain? We make plans to make better decisions. And so I've kind of pivoted over the years from, kind of a data centric or a process centric view to a decision centric view. The speed and precision of execution, as I mentioned before, is really about how fast we can make good decisions. So let's kind of drill into an example. Um,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
you know, it, so the example I want to use is a fairly simple, manufacturing supply chain example. If you want to click the builds,
Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
that I think we can all relate to. It's fairly simple to understand. It's steel panels. So imagine you're seeing an industrial building, a warehouse or something that has the corrugated steel siding and roofing. Imagine, you're a producer of those panels. What are the particular characteristics of the product, right? So I have different types of steel, I have different thicknesses, I have different coatings and different grades of steel that I can use. I can paint them into different colors, I can stamp them into different profiles, kind of triangular or wavy or what have you. And then ultimately they have to be cut into certain widths and lengths. Well, if you look at the end products that you sell as a provider of these panels, there are millions of end products. There are millions of permutations of grade, color, uh, profile, or the stamping, and the length and the width. So how do I begin to forecast what I need? Do I need to forecast every combination of grade, profile, color, length, and width? Well, not really, right? It really boils down to what decisions do I need to make to most effectively run my supply chain. So let's build that up from the bottoms up. If I look at it now in the context of data, information, knowledge, wisdom, what do I have as my raw material? I have customer orders. I know what the steel is costing me. I have freight costs by shipment. I have supplier lead times. I have I have all that kind of root data, but that really doesn't help me a whole lot in deciding how much steel I'm going to buy. I have to begin to turn that into information. So one more click. What does information look like on top of that? Well, I can begin to organize my orders by volumes of different colors and steel types. Now that begins to be more useful than just a big pile of customer orders. I can look at relevant building trends and where what interest rates are doing and how people are investing in industrial buildings that use my product. I know my freight costs. I can organize them by lane. I can organize them by origin, destination, by customer type. I can begin to build a data set around the freight costs. I know my lead times by customer location. I can begin to put that into useful information, but it's still not all that helpful in making a decision. And in the end, so one more click, what does knowledge look like here? Um, this now begins to say, all right, what is my baseline steel demand by type? And the decisions that I have to make in the end, this company, a company that makes this, about 80 to 85% of their revenue is what they spend on steel. So if you would argue there's one decision that they make and one decision they have to make, well, it's what steel to buy. The problem is I have to buy steel somewhere with a lead time of 3 to 6 months. If the market's getting tight, I actually have to buy it further in advance. If the market is loose, I can buy it with a little shorter lead time. But I need to understand what steel I'm buying 3 to 6 months in advance. That is driving 85%, or that it's driving 90% of my cost structure, and buying steel is the primary determinant of whether I'm making money or losing money ultimately in this game. So I need to understand my pricing, my volume, my lead time relationship. How do I shape demand? How can I move prices up and down to make sure that I'm making right profit in relation to the steel cost and steel pricing? What is steel pricing going to look like 3 to 6 months in advance? What are my scenarios around that? Do I need to be hedging? Do I need to be doing advanced things to protect my cost structure in the case of variability? Um,
Yeah.
what are my
So
customer costs to
Brad,
serve? Go ahead, Chris.
this is so what you're saying is, I mean, obviously supply chain consists of big decisions like this one and small decisions, or smaller decisions, across the board. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is, how can we improve decision-making patterns in the organization?
Yeah, yeah,
Leveraging data, leveraging knowledge potentially. That's really the point that you're trying to make, right? How can you combine knowledge and data specifically to assist in that, right? And I think that's what
yeah,
we are
and I'm
interested in
focusing
too, right?
primarily on what I'll call the routine decisions, right? The ones that I have to make, daily, weekly, monthly, and not the kind of big one-time decisions like should I make this acquisition? Should I build a new plant there? I think most companies analyze those things pretty thoroughly. Not saying they always do it perfectly, but those are certainly the big kind of one-time decisions. I'm focusing on the hundreds of decisions that are made every day in every supply chain. So one example
Yeah,
is a shipping dock foreman
right.
has to decide whether to work overtime to load the trucks, or to you know just close down for the day, not incur overtime, and be late by shipping them tomorrow. I mean, that in the end is a fairly strategic decision because it depends on whether I want to compete on service or cost or other things. How do we align those decisions to the strategy, and how do we make them on the basis fast and correct? So if you one more click, I mean, just if you look at some of the decisions in this steel supply
Okay.
chain, it's the steel purchasing, it's the pricing. Um, so all of those are decisions around that are very important decisions around the steel purchasing and the demand forecasting problem. But the key point here is just having the orders and putting them in a database and slicing them, dicing them by color and steel type is not enough, right? I have to be able to kind of align them to the knowledge required to make decisions. And so in this
Yeah.
case, that knowledge is shown here. So
right, because at the end of the day, a dashboard doesn't give you an answer, right? It just gives you parameters. It maybe organizes your input, but it doesn't really interpret the input and makes a decision for you. So I think, that's what, at least that what we'd like to drive forward, is that, knowledge graphs are not about organizing your data and putting them into a report. It's really about interpreting the data and providing the knowledge or the systematic support in interpreting the data and preparing decisions, right? Because I think that's what we see in organizations. People have dashboards that tell them prices of hedges, show them lead time of something, or price development of freight or something, but how does that convert into a decision? I
But
think that's
ultimately, I
where,
have all of that data and information and hopefully knowledge in front of me. I still have to push a button,
yeah,
right, on executing a hedge transaction or
right.
executing a purchase transaction. And that is a decision. I have now decided to take a definitive action. And
Mhm.
what we want, the aspiration is, at the point in time of that decision, have we done all of the right analytics, right, with the right data at the right time, with the bringing it to the right people, so that when that transaction is made, it is done with timely, right? It's done in the right time frame, but it's done also with precision.
Yeah, and then it comes back to, sorry, going back from the single first little decision that we just looked at, to considering that the success of an organization and the agility of the organization is really about making hundreds, if not thousands, of such little decisions on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Organizations with hundreds of thousands of employees obviously make hundreds of thousands of decisions on an hourly basis. And the question, about agility and digital transformation and, competitiveness in the future is really about, how to expedite those decisions, assure that the quality increases. And I think that a lot of companies are expecting AI to do a big job here. But I think there's also a lot of systematic stuff that needs to be done or can be done, to prepare, this transformation. And it doesn't stop on the data level, let's say. And maybe let's talk about, how you can systematically improve decision making and what it takes. And I don't know, that's right.
So I kind of, we talk a lot about, and I know eccenca is really big on thinking about data centricity. And again, you can't do any of this without data. But I would argue that the ultimate end game is the decision centricity. It's
Mhm.
understanding those
Yeah.
decisions, and it could well be the hundreds of decisions that fall into one group. And I would submit, unproven at this point, but that profit leakage in a company comes down to oftentimes the inability to execute to a very tight and precise playbook of those decisions, right? I can tell you a number of times that shipping dock example, where the shipping dock foreman decided not to work overtime and a primary customer's important shipment was late, that the CEO of the company got an email from the customer saying, this can't happen again. So here's a small decision that's made dozens, if not hundreds of times, that has very real implications all the way up to the C-suite. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
how do we get all of those aligned and made precisely without being overly rigid in kind of the rules of how people make decisions?
Well, data plays into it, but interpreting the data and then deriving to a good decision, or arriving at a good decision. This could also mean that maybe you don't need to go overtime for the entire thing, but you could maybe drop, loading a couple of other trucks, because you know that one of the trucks carries something that's really sensitive, that's very time critical, for instance. That's that's the kind of thing that interconnecting your data and basically linking data from the customer to the order, to the process, and then to the supply chain, the delivery, making that whole chain transparent will mean that somebody on the dock can tell that this may be a shipment, one may be a shipment that can wait and another shipment cannot wait. And so he'll make the call, to go the extra mile. I think, but he can't do it unless the knowledge is there and the data is there, right?
Right. So you just touched on a great point in the last part. I tend to look at things from the decision back rather than the data up.
Right.
And so I kind of tend to look and say, all right, if the decision that I need to make is, what what shipments do I prioritize to get out,
Mm,
right? We're backlogged on the shipping dock, and I have to make a decision about which things stay and which things go. Well,
mm,
what is the information I need to make that decision? And then below that, what data do I need to form that information and form that knowledge? And I tend to look at when I go that down from the decision down into the data, I kind of say, all right, I group the data into what data do I have?
mm,
What data should I have? Right? It's available, it's out there, but I don't have it, but I should be able to get it.
mm,
Then what data could I have? What's the could have data? It's out there somewhere. It may not be in our systems, but you
mm,
know what? To make the best decision, it would be very valuable to have that data. And then there's the hard to get data that says, if I could make an absolutely perfect decision if I had this. Don't know that it exists, don't know that it's out there. It may require some big data and fancy analytics to get it, but you know what? I can really have an advantage over my competitors if I can find a way to tap that data. And to me, that's where the big data problem often comes in, is in that hard to get unstructured data that's the last layer. But quite honestly, even if I look at the first three layers of that, the data that I have, the data that I should have, and the data that I could have,
mm.
that is where people struggle. Just even the shipping dock foreman, there's probably all sorts of data in the systems that is not being made available to that. Does marketing have a customer priority list that is not feeding into the order management system to inform them that says truck A is the one that has the highest priority orders that must go out today?
Oh, you're teeing it up for me a little bit, because I think that's a unique differentiator, one of the unique differentiators of the eccenca approach. I think we also like to start on the decision level and wondering, what data that needs to go into this decision. And I think this is also interesting for our audience, because typically when you work with your IT department, you talk about managing data for decision processes, they'll ask you, what data do you need? And then I'll build you a data warehouse, right? And it kind of locks you into the list of data sets that you originally mentioned. And then if you come up with a new data set, that's going to be a problem. I think our approach differs widely, because we can go and say, look, what's your problem? Just bring in the data that you need. And if you have the impression that there's other data out there, just bring it in again. And you can just build it, to grow and support more questions as you go. And the more data you've brought in, the more questions you probably be able to ask from scratch. But at the end of the day, this whole thing is about growing the number of questions that we want to answer, right? Decisions that we want to automate. And we're never ever limited in the amount of data that we tie in, the amount of knowledge that we build into this. It just keeps growing. Whereas, on the other way around, the typical IT approach being to define the data that you need, that's available, and then you're kind of stuck with it. And that's where we get to that silo or application centricity, that we talked about, that we don't like so much. We like to be data centric and then use data across multiple decisions potentially. That's kind of the thing. So thanks for that. I think that's a very important thing, because it also is an emancipation in a way of the business from the ways of IT, right? The waterfall thing, where IT will tell me, well, give me all your requirements, tell me all the data that you want me to put into that thing, and I'll build a great thing for you in 2 years' time, and wait for SAP for HANA, I'll make it happen for you. It's kind of that long. We want to be more agile. I think this new technology lets you be very decision centric, customer centric, and then data centric, and not think about technology too much. That's the new mindset that we would like to propagate, and I think that's possible, and that we show with other clients. And I think it really opens a door to a new data-centric and decision-centric mindset, less silo-minded, I think, and that's very helpful. But let's get back to the decision-making process, because obviously it's not only about automating decisions; it's actually also making the right and good decisions. I think that we need to talk about a little bit, because if we go into automating decisions, we better make sure that we automate it in a way that it consistently creates the right decisions, or at least a high quality of decisions, because not all decisions can be right, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I get frustrated a lot of times in discussions about good decisions and right decisions. And so I developed a mental model, if you want to click to the next slide, that I think is very helpful in thinking about decision making and why it makes sense to focus on important decisions, and the process of making decisions, not so much the outcome, right? You can't control the outcome at the time you're making the decision. The outcome is going to happen. What you can control is how well the decision is made. And so I tend to like to use the language of a good decision and a bad decision is about the process of making a decision. It's not about the outcome. Um, the decision outcome is the right decision or the wrong decision, and whatever happens will determine that. But all I can control at the time of making a decision is, am I making the decision on the basis of a good, solid process? And what do I mean by that? What is a decision quality? And I use this kind of DAPT acronym. To me, a good decision is one that has the right data with the right analysis brought to the right people, i.e., the right decision makers at the right time. And it's very easy to characterize all four of those dimensions of a decision. Did I bring all the data that I could possibly bring to help me make the best decision? Did I do the right analysis on that? Did I bring it to the right people? And most importantly, did I do all that in the time that's required? I need to make this decision today. I don't have weeks to do all the crunching and all that. What can I bring to it today? Um, what happens, right? And what you find over time is that there is, and obviously should be, a fairly strong correlation between a good decision, one that is well made, and the right outcome. That's not always going to happen, right? I may just make a guess. I may pull something out of a hat, and I may end up with the right outcome for no real benefit of my process. That's good luck, right? That's dumb luck. Likewise, I could do all the analytics in the world and I can have all those things that I talked about in the D, the A, the P, and the T all buttoned up, and I can have a bad outcome. I can have a wrong decision. And that's just bad luck. That happens too. But over time, with the thousands and hundreds and thousands of decisions that an organization makes, there's a strong correlation between well-made decisions and right decisions or good outcomes. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. And so, I like to use this kind of analytical approach that says, what's the profit impact of that decision, right? If I make that decision really well and have a good outcome, how much does it fall to the bottom line versus having a bad outcome on that decision? And so you can see the size of the bubbles is really, a figurative representation of big, important decisions and smaller decisions along the way. But there's this bubble down in the bottom left, which is a white bubble with a bunch of small circles, and that's like the shipping dock decision, right? I make hundreds of those. They're all basically the same decision. They require the same data, information, knowledge, but they're discrete and independent events. But if I can master how I make that type of decision, I can fix hundreds of those little decisions, and they have a pretty big cumulative effect, right? So in this case, I'm not making them well. I'm going to have poor outcomes. How do I move that white circle with the orange dots in it, up to the upper right quadrant? And that really is, to me, profiling, or I use the term developing a playbook for that decision. What's the time frame? Who are the decision makers? What's the right knowledge to bring to that decision? And then how does that tell me what data I have underneath it? If I use that steel forecasting example, I don't need to know the colors. I don't need to know the links and the profiles. I just need to know the, half a dozen different types of steel that I buy. But I have to know that 6 months in advance, right? So that then develops a specification for the data that I need to gather to inform that decision.
That's the playbook that you're talking about.
Exactly.
So for each decision, what you're saying is that you're looking to build a playbook, and the playbook is really the business knowledge that's required, including the data that's required to kind of systematically structure the decision process and then consistently come up with a right response. And maybe I can take one step back from this, because it's not, I think a lot of the people that we talk to, chief data officers a lot, and then there's also chief data value officers now in organizations, and then there's the heads of digital transformation. And I think your example here is really something that it could be valuable for them, because it's also a question of, where do I find sweet spots for value from data or for value from digital transformation, right?
We really kind of developed this framework or this mental model. I took a look at over 170 sales and operations planning implementations, right? And sales and operations planning has been around now probably almost 40 years, if not more. Everybody knows the process, but yet so many of those implementations fail. And so I looked at where we had done S&OP, and most of those were actually working on an existing S&OP process and making it better. And where they were failing is they were not making decisions. And so we use this to focus in on, hey, we're going to rebuild your S&OP process, and we're going to focus on really 2 or 3 key decisions first. And we're going to get the data and the analytics and everything around that, and we're going to nail those. And what you find when you do this analysis actually in a quantitative way, the decision value analysis, as you see here on the slide, there really are only 3 or 4 major decisions or groups of decisions that really drive the profitability of the company. And so why not start there, get those mastered, and then begin to layer on the next level of decisions. And we found that approach to be incredibly valuable. Almost instantly, the S&OP process started making very good and impactful decisions on the things that matter. And then that approach just cascaded through the rest of the operations of the organization as we added, those playbooks, if you will, from one decision to the next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think it's very important to talk about this. So, I think when we again talk to these clients, I think they are, looking to find the right way into this, because I think a lot of the companies we talk to see the need to become more digital, but they don't know where to start and where to end, right? And just dumping technology on them won't help. I think we need to kind of also think about a methodology to find value, and then also interact with the business in a different way. I think sometimes, the mindset is more about, well, I've got a data warehouse. Where can we do this? What can we do with the data warehouse? I think the way you go about it is, from a business perspective, looking for value first, and then going and see how we can apply technology. I think that's a very well. It also resonates very well with the sponsors and stakeholders in the organization, I think, and it really changes the perspective. I think maybe the power shift a little bit back to business not following IT, but IT actually following business. And following business where we can actually identify places where we can create value with relatively little effort, because I think some of those, it looks like a big decision, but at the end of the day, if you look at it from a technology standpoint, it could actually be easily supported in many cases. It's just, if you don't dissect the whole wealth of decisions, and you are stuck in a place where you want to fix all the problems that the organization have with one application. I think that's when you're just trying to lift something that's too heavy. But if you bite off little decisions or little segments here, like the bubbles that you found, and then hone in on those and deliver value, I think that you get a lot of positive response, by the organization, because you do take a value oriented approach rather than a tech oriented approach.
It's a matter of focus as well. It's just very easy to work across organizational boundaries when you have that laser focus and partnership around making 1 or 2 or 3 decisions very well. Going back to the speed and precision, rather than trying to solve it all at once, if we can find the 2 or 3 of those circles down in the left, lower left box, where we're leaving a lot of money on the table because we are inconsistent or just not making good decisions, it becomes a very easy cross-functional partnership and focus to say, we're going to take those 2 big yellow, big orange dots, or the white one with the little, and we're going to move those up.
Yeah, and I think the contribution that we can make, with knowledge graphs, is I think that we can find a solution to small business cases, let's say. I'm sure that some of the big decisions, like your steel decision, could be taken, with a 5 million a year budget, because it's a $1 billion a year investment. So, obviously there's a big team or analysts or McKinsey or whatever involved in making that one big super decision. I think organizations are already pretty good at that. I think it's a lot of the small decisions also that make up the culture of the organization and make up the, the customer experience, how you're perceived in the market and how you actually perform on some of this. Because I think big decisions, I think, are often very aligned to CEO messaging and strategy, and basically it's very much in the focus. But how can you consistently feed the CEO vision, mission, and strategy into the little decisions across the company, and how can you technically support that? Because you obviously can't do $1 million project for every one of those little decisions. I think knowledge graphs, that's at least my proposition.
I mean, it's the death of 1,000 cuts metaphor, right?
Yeah.
It says, those little things do add up, but also don't underestimate or don't overestimate how well companies make sometimes the big decisions, right? And this is maybe where the data, information, knowledge, wisdom gets a little bit sideways, in the sense that wisdom sometimes is that gut feel. It's the virtue of my decades of experience that I know how to make that decision. But wisdom can often be, misapplied in fairly significant ways. So that is, that's a risk of sometimes the big decisions. Is there's an over reliance on misapplied wisdom in the executive ranks sometimes.
Of course. Well, Brad, I think we've already hit the 45-minute mark. I don't know if we need to get into the takeaway a little bit here.
Yeah, I think it's probably good to put a punctuation on
Yeah.
just the how do we get there quickly, and then we'll
Exactly.
we'll summarize it up. And I think we've
Right.
touched on most of these things, in an indirect way. I'm sure there's more to it than this. This is a practitioner's view, not an IT person's view of the world. But I kind of see there are three approaches to driving data into information, into knowledge, and ultimately good decision. I'll call one the traditional approach. And if you ever hear, we just need to get everything into one ERP, so it's all there. It's everything is organized. I can find it. Everybody can access it. I think we've all learned over the last 12 or 15 years that A, business is too dynamic. It changes too fast. B, this takes too long. And it just, by the time we get there, it's no longer relevant or right. But it's an attempt to try to organize and connect everything, which I think in most industries and businesses and companies is just not necessarily a practical solution. The second one is really big data, and every bit, literally in terms of every information bit, dump it all in the pool or the lake or the ocean or whatever body of water we want to call our data, our data construct. To me, this is an attempt in kind of American Statue of Liberty parlance. Give me your poor, tired, unstructured data yearning to be information. I'm going to dump it all in there. The algorithms will figure it out, and we'll trust the technology to tell us all the things that it needs to tell us. Again, some amazing things done there. I don't mean to dismiss it, but I think it is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. The last one is this notion of decision centricity, right? How do I begin to focus and really drill down the data into these playbooks in ways that matter the most to help me make the decisions with the most impact for the company? And that really is a matter of optimizing both the structure and the flexibility of the data, realizing the dynamics. And again, I can't do that for everything side to side, top to back, front to bottom. I can't have the one data, in Lord of the Rings, I can't have the one database to rule them all. I have to be much more dynamic and flexible and focused. And that's where the decision-centric part comes in. So where do each of these things work well? Each of them has their strengths. If you want to click, so the kind of traditional approach, the one ERP, the master database, that's really good for transactional data and getting transactions and master data buttoned up and structured. Those things tend to be somewhat timeless. It's good to have a transactional layer that is structured and consistent. Big data works well in naturally unstructured data. And I think where its real successes are on things like mining social media and other internet data that is messy and it's sloppy, but there's a lot of information content there. It takes a lot of data to get information, and it's not always a structured rows and columns sort of process. It's also really good for hypothesis testing. I'm starting to see things I think my customer base are doing. I want to test that hypothesis. decision centricity in my mind, works very well on focused, flexible, high impact analysis. And in particular, it also is one that works very well in high complexity and scale. And this is where I am absolutely a firm believer in eccenca and what you're doing and knowledge graphs and the power of semantic data constructs, because I don't think there's any other way, in my view, to get to that focused, flexible, high impact analysis that can be done in complex, large scale environments. I just don't think there's any other way to get there. So that's why you and I have developed the friendship, because I think it's where we need to go. Where it fails, the traditional approach, when you get into complex planning and highly dynamic businesses, and at scale becomes cumbersome. It begins to crush under its own weight. The big data approach, I don't find works well for what I'll call precision planning and execution, i.e. most of what happens in a supply chain. I have to make a very specific decision around how much steel to buy in what time frame, from what supplier in what region. The decision-centric approach, to me, the failure mode is really a mismatch of competencies. Trying to fit a square peg, i.e. semantics and knowledge graphs, into a round hole, relational databases. I kind of use when you teach a 3-year-old how to speak a language, they don't learn it in translation. They learn it as an integral data set. When you try to teach somebody that's 60 years old a new language, they have to learn it in translation. To me, knowledge graphs and semantics cannot be translated from relational databases. Trying to drill everything back into something I understand, and then it just, to me, neuters the value of knowledge graphs and semantics. It has to be a new island, a new paradigm that is thought about from
I think the two can play together well. One, we cannot do without the ERPs and the relational databases in the transactional environment. On the other hand, as you said, for your decision playbooks, there is just no place for the types of things that you need to put in such a playbook in your relational database, and there is no such a thing in a big data environment to put those decision playbooks. But knowledge graphs can do it, right? Can hold it. They are made, to actually, build knowledge. And I think those playbooks are basically manifested knowledge about decisions that need to be taken and the data that goes into it. And so I think that's just where we are. But again, to move forward and kind of just summarize a little bit, I don't know if we've got any questions here. I've got to look up that maybe, but maybe we can just summarize here a little bit the takeaways, I think. So obviously, decision speed, and collaboration have been a big trend in recent times. So and if I can summarize this for you, I think what you're saying is that if we have to take decisions at speed, with more and more, smaller margins, involved in a more and more competitive, marketplace, we need to find a way to make better decisions consistently, faster, and more scalable, right? And so that's why we're talking, I think, right? Would you say that is a correct summarization of the key assumptions?
Yeah. Why don't you click through all the takeaways, and
Okay.
I think there are a couple questions popping up I see on the panel, and it'd be good to get to
Yeah.
those. So how do you get there? Obviously speed, precision, collaboration, tremendously important, more so than ever. Data is a raw material, but it's really just that. It's really, how do we transform it and turn it into better, faster decisions? We talked about playbooks, kind of as a way of doing that, finding the decisions that are the most important and the most impactful, to make them well, and then drawing the specifications down into the data required to do that. When you look at it through a decision-centric lens, semantics and knowledge graphs, I think, are a magic key to unlock that. And again, a good decision is a well-made decision, not necessarily the right outcome, but there's going to be a strong agreement between a well-made decision and good outcomes. And then lastly, winners are the ones that are going to be able to tap that data, transform it, and ultimately turn it into the decisions that matter. So, one of the questions I see up there is, how exactly should an enterprise go from data to knowledge? And I think the the discussion before was really around thinking about those decisions, picking the handful of decisions that you want to focus on, and developing those playbooks or those data specifications, if you will, to make that decision. What is the data I have? Am I using it appropriately? What data could I have? It's available? I just need to bring it to the right analytics and the right person. In a broader sense, what data should I have, that I may not have, and how do I get that? And then lastly, if I broadly open it, what's the world and the universe of data I could bring to bear to this problem? But crawl, walk, run. Start with the fundamental decisions, make it simple, get the right data, the right analytics to the right people, and then layer on the sophistication and the complexity, and then add more decisions. Once you've mastered that rhythm a few times, it's amazing how fast an organization can quickly come up that curve of making better decisions in a broad range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that goes back to also the question. The other question that came here was, how can it be implemented on an operational level? So what you're saying here is, pick and choose your fights. I guess coordinate with the business in your organization, and then try to land some wins to start with. And then basically showcase your ability to build those decision playbooks, build up the data that's necessary, obviously, but also, again, those playbooks to make those decisions and start automating decisions, supporting decisions. And I think, don't try to do too many of those at the get-go, right? I mean, basically establish lighthouse references in your organization, test your capability, prove your capability, and then establish an organization that can scale that ability or that capability into more and more decisions, I guess, right?
Another question just popped up. I think it's probably more fitting for you because what routes are open to find the right competence in place for the change to a semantics approach? That's a tricky one, right? I mean, you've got probably a limited talent pool there of people that just fundamentally think in that way. How do you go about making sure that those people are brought in and given the right authority within a business to kind of move to a different way of thinking?
Yeah, well, it's really a question about how you interpret the question, right? I think what we have to do as semantic technology vendors, let's say, is really to reduce the speak of semantics and ontology, and bring it to a level where it doesn't have such a big barrier to entry for business subject matter experts. I think we need to speak the language of the business. We need to also provide tooling that's very end user focused. We need to, one of the big things I think with standard software has been that, basically when you pour a standard software into your organization, you're forcing the entire organization to kind of learn that standard software, learn that user interface, learn the process that the standard software enforces on you. I think for us as a semantics, and data centric organization, I think what we need to think of is really building out solutions that really fit a certain problem with a very user specific and business specific UI. We are by no means limited in any way of producing a user experience that is very centered around the decision that needs to be taken. We don't have standard user interfaces that need to bend over backwards to fit a certain problem. I think so finding the competencies and also finding acceptance in your organization, one big step for us is to speak the language of the business, and then also reflect that understanding of the need of the business by also providing user interfaces or user experience when using the technology that is very, very business oriented and doesn't force the business to become a tech person. I think that's really a different mindset. Well, there's yet another question coming in, a big one here. Everybody wants to see the tangible benefits of better decisions, but when we use the graph technology to make better decisions, how do we prove that they were better, especially if the intangible benefits cannot be quantified? Well, I have an answer to that, but maybe Brad, you want to go for that? But
well, I think in the end, it's measured in the traditional measures of business, right? I'm not sure I would go all over of dissecting each individual decision and whether it was right or wrong. Or to me, this is an accumulative fact of like we said in the graph, over time, my profits should improve, my customer service should improve, all those traditional supply chain measures, because we know that there's leakage and bad decisions today. So, I'm not sure that's a completely compelling answer.
well,
There's certain
but
ones that are
Brad,
easier to
I
quantify
think
than
from
others.
my perspective, since I think I'm the one who wants to consistently be making this even small decisions that are aligned with mission and vision and strategy of the organizations. So I think the way we prove that the decisions are better is that we can show that the method that went into it and the data that went into it is consistently better than the way it was done before. And if it's only consistently better in that way, that you can also change it. So if you're saying I'm a CFO dominated organization, and you say, well, for us profitability is king, we're not going to load these, right? Maybe we get a new CEO and we're going to change our focus to be the leading customer oriented supplier in our industry. In the way we are thinking about decision making in our organization, this will immediately feed into all of this discussion, and it would basically turn the decision to a case where they'll say, well, we'll work overtime on all 4 docks to get all the trucks out, even if it's after 5 o'clock. And I think the ability to influence small decisions, thousands, even hundreds of thousands small decisions throughout the organization, just by tweaking the model on the knowledge graph, I think is dramatic. And it basically assures that a CEO can centrally influence thousands of decisions rather than making town hall meetings and talking to everybody and hoping that all decisions will now change on the fly. They won't, but this way they could in the long run.
No, I agree.
I think this was very valuable, Brad. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talking to you again. Thank you very much also to the audience for joining us, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for everybody on the line. My pleasure.